Right after Fukushima, one of the Japanese energy ministers said that they have to keep going with nuclear power because, quote, we can't imagine living without electricity. So I was thinking a few things. One of them is, well, right now about 2 billion people on the planet live without electricity, and they do very fine. Also, humans did fine up until about the turn of the, maybe 1920, before that, without industrially generated electricity. We basically were on 5 continents, and we were doing very well. And you can't imagine living without electricity, but the main thing that hit me is that have you ever heard some public official say, we can't imagine living without polar bears? We can't imagine living without monarch butterflies? We can't imagine living without the Colorado River reaching the ocean? We can't imagine living without living oceans? We can't imagine. That's the problem, is a failure of imagination, that we can't imagine living without Wi-Fi, but we can imagine living without salmon. Okay, I guess what I want to say is I want to do like a 2-minute version of Lewis Mumford. People know Lewis Mumford? Oh, a few people. Lewis Mumford talked about something called a technic. And a technic is, a technology does not emerge out of nowhere. It emerges from, a technic is the social circumstances that give rise to and then emerge from a technology. So the Tolowa did not create chainsaws, not because they were too stupid. Instead, they created different technologies, like, for example, salmon welcoming songs. Their social circumstances would lead to that form of technology. Our social circumstances would lead to, our mindset would lead to chainsaws. And then also, once you have a technology, it changes how you perceive the world. So I live 3 miles from a grocery store, and if I didn't have a car, if I do have a car, then I can drive to the grocery store, I forget something, it's no big deal. Distance doesn't matter. But if I don't have a car, then 3 miles, that's a long ways to walk to the grocery store. So a technology then changes how I perceive, traveling from Crescent City to San Francisco would be a job of, I don't know how long it'd take me to walk this far. I wouldn't do it. And so it changes how we perceive the world then. And he said that technologies will fall into sort of democratic and authoritarian techniques. And a democratic technique is one that emerges from and leads to democratic power structures. An authoritarian technique is one that emerges from and leads to authoritarian power structures. And it's really pretty simple. A democratic technique is one that you and your community can control. So bows and arrows, we can make our own. On the other hand, guns, you're dependent upon mines, you're dependent on whoever makes the bullets, you're dependent upon, unless you live in a bat cave, you're dependent on gunpowder from somebody else. So it is controlled by others. So that makes it authoritarian because they can control you through it. We talk about agriculture, especially people earlier talked about agriculture, that it's authoritarian because it allows you to be controlled by others. And grocery stores are authoritarian because I'm controlled by others, as opposed to, why would I go to the grocery store when there's salmon in the stream behind my home? So gathering would be a democratic technique. And passive solar, democratic technique. Solar photovoltaics, authoritarian technique. But they're authoritarian not only because they lead to authoritarian power structures, but they're authoritarian because the technology itself is authoritarian, and the technology itself ends up in charge. So once you create cars, the cars are in control. It's like I saw this cartoon years ago that was 2 machines talking, and one of them said, we had them from the toaster. And the point is that global warming, yeah, it was happening way before, but the burning of oil is for industry. It's primarily for industry. It's almost exclusively for industry. 5 minutes. Okay. The drought in California, we always hear you should take shorter showers, all that stuff, that we have to take responsibility for the drought. Bullshit. 90% of the water used by human beings is used by agriculture and industry. So if you take shorter showers, all it's going to do is ruin your social life. Municipal golf courses use the same amount of water as municipal human beings. So the technique becomes in charge. That's how they can say it's a dilemma between fracking and drinking water, because the technology is in charge. So that's one of the ways that authoritarian techniques, I mean, we're sacrificing life on Earth rather than question the wisdom of buying into these techniques. And that's one of the ways an authoritarian techniques is authoritarian. Like any other despot, it cannot be questioned, even when it's killing all we hold dear. And that's what we're up against. I mean, so where does all this leave us? It leaves us the same place we started, which is the world's being killed and we need to stop it. So I've already talked about what I think is necessary early on. Another way to think about that is to ask what Delta Smelt would do if they could take on human manifestation, and what would coho salmon do, and what would redwoods do, and what would prairies do. Another way to say all this is that so many indigenous people have said to me that the first and most important thing that we have to do is to decolonize our hearts and minds. That's also what we need to do to get over PTSD. We need to break our identification with the perpetrator. We need to break our addiction to the authoritarian techniques. We need to make our allegiance to the victims of this culture absolute. We need to make our allegiance to the land absolute. We need to make our allegiance to coho salmon and Pacific lamprey absolute. Our allegiance to Port Orford cedar and western lily absolute. We need to find what we love, and then we need to defend our beloved. This identification takes many forms. There was an essay by George Monbiot right after Fukushima, in which one of the things he said is that nuclear power is great because of global warming, that we all need to do nuclear power, because how else are we going to get the power that we need to run our factories? I'm going to change a couple words that's going to change everything. How are the capitalists going to get the energy that they need to run their factories? And that's the split we need to make. It's not us needing electricity to run our factories, it's them needing electricity to run their factories. Once you break that split, everything else is technical. Then we can figure out how to do it. So I need to be clear about something else. Humans are not killing the planet. Industrial humans are killing the planet. Humans identify more with this culture than they do with life are killing the planet. Humans lived on this planet for tens or hundreds of thousands of years without destroying it. It's only in the last 6,000 years that a culture toxic enough to kill the planet has emerged. The choice we face is not between killing ourselves and killing the planet. The choice we face is continuing this way of life that's killing the planet and us or not. We can allow this culture to kill the planet, or we can bring down this culture. So what do I want you to do? I don't know you, and I don't know your gifts. So instead of me telling you what to do, I want you to ask yourself, what do you love? Whatever you love, it's under assault. Dig in and defend it. And what are your gifts? And people have said to me, God, Derrick, you've written so many books, why don't you quit now and be an organizer? Oh, for God's sake, I can't even organize my fucking backpack, you know? And also, it's like, I may not seem like it here, but I am an extreme introvert. And organizers have to do this horrible, they have to like talk to strangers. And I think I might rather the planet be killed. It's a joke, you know, but it's like, there are things that we can do and things that we can't do. It's like, I don't want to be a fucking lawyer. And what are your gifts, and how can you use them in the service of your land base? What can you give back to the land who gave you your life? And what are the largest, most pressing problems that you can help to solve using the gifts that are unique to you in all the universe? The big distinction is not between those who believe in militant resistance and those who don't. I think those are important discussions to have, but the big distinction is between those who do something and those who do nothing. Do something. And finally, some good news. I often think about the partisans in World War II, and I think about them doing their part to bring down the Nazis. And then I think about an advantage that they had over us. They didn't have to defeat the Nazis by themselves. They had the Allies. For the longest time, this depressed the hell out of me. Where is a big Soviet army rumbling in? Or where are the British and US bombers to destroy the Nazi war machines? There isn't one. But then I realized that I have been wrong all along. There is something much bigger than the Allies that will help us, and that's the real world. Life desperately wants to live. And from the smallest root reaching into the biggest dam to the wildest hurricane and fastest tornado who are doing what they can, to the leaf-scaled sea snakes and three-toed pygmy sloths and the Sumatran rhinos and the Cayman Islands ghost orchids, who are desperately trying to hang on until the non-human and human resistance kicks in to end this nightmare that's gone on for too long. The whole world is resisting. We have them on our side. So we don't have to do it by ourselves. We just have to join them. And we have to use our gifts and use your gifts, whatever they are, in the service of that greater good. So thank you very much.